Great lawyers don't always know how to build great law firms. Let's change that. Join Ben Gideon as he shares hard-won lessons from building his own financially successful law firm and practical insights from top law firm entrepreneurs, business consultants, and more. This is a podcast for lawyers, by lawyers. Welcome to Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm. Produced and powered by Law Pods.
Today's episode of the Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm podcast is brought to you by Supio. I just spent an hour doing a webinar with the Supio folks. It was great. We had the head of business development and also one of the lawyers from Texas who's been an early adopter of Supio and walked through some case models of how you use Supio to put a case together. It was very, very impressive. I would encourage everyone who doesn't yet have an AI platform for their law firm, if they're a plaintiff's side, personal injury, medical malpractice type of law firm, check out Supio and get the demo. Our podcast today is also brought to you by Vision Spark. Vision Spark is the company that helps law firms and other businesses find seconds in command. You know any seconds in command, Jeff?
That would be me. It's exactly where I want to be.
When I think of number two, I always think of Jeff.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that.
We have Vision Spark to credit for the search process that led us to Jeff, and then Jeff has led us to the holy grail of, it appears, to doubling our revenues in less than a year of your time at our firm. So it's all paid off very well. Anybody who needs a second in command like Jeff, I would encourage you to talk to Vision Spark. Our podcast is also brought to you by 1% for Planet. 1% for Planet, folks, is the organization that allows you to contribute 1% of your gross revenues to environmentally conscious nonprofits. Our firm has done that. It's a great organization that's allowed us to partner with some really terrific nonprofits in Maine and throughout northern New England, and we really would love to have other firms join us in that. And if you do join us in 1%, please reach out to us and we'll give you a plug on the show.
Welcome, everyone, to the Elevate, Build, and Grow Your Law Firm podcast. We're here today with our host, Ben Gideon, and myself, Jeff Wright, Chief Operating Officer. And today we are joined by T.A. McCann, who I was struggling on how to introduce him, but I guess serial entrepreneur might be cover a lot of areas, T.A.
It works for me.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, so I met T.A. McCann, was a featured speaker at a conference I attended several months back in Oregon, and you gave a little bit of your bio, but I understand you've started a number of successful tech companies, managed to sell those companies, and then now you have founded a tech company incubator where you work as a venture capitalist to help new companies get off the ground. So you want to just give us a thumbnail sketch of your of that background, TA, before we get into it?
Yeah, great. So thanks for having me. So I'm a mechanical engineer from Purdue. So a lot of the answers I'll give will feel like building machines. And I am a 5-time founder. So I've done 5 different software companies. I've had 3 successful exits. So I sold 1 company to BlackBerry, 1 company to NetBase, 1 company to Google. And after I sold my last company, I decided to join Pioneer Square Labs. And Pioneer Square Labs has 3 parts of our business. So one is a startup studio, or you could think of that as an incubator. And over the last 10 years of PSL's life, we've tested north of 500 ideas, and we just created our 43rd company. So we've gotten very, very good at the process of testing, evaluating, validating, or invalidating, for the most part, new ideas. The second part of our business is venture capital investing. So we're currently investing out of a $100 million venture fund. We invest in early stage technology companies, all based in the Pacific Northwest. So for listeners, that would basically mean Oregon, Washington, or Vancouver, Canada, the upper left-hand corner of the United States where we live. We invest in that geographical area. And then the third part of our business is really corporate innovation. So we'll partner with large corporates who may have a customer base or an idea or market they want to enter, but they don't have the skills or experience to go do that. So they'll use our studio process to co-create new companies. And of those 43 companies we've started, 6 of them been co-created with other large corporates. So I could imagine some people in your audience who may say like, well, we want to do a company like this, but we don't maybe have the skills or expertise to do it. In fact, one of our companies that I can talk about called Single File was co-created and has the first early investors are the best 5 law firms in Seattle for early stage technology companies. So while we did that company and then brought them on as investors, one could argue that we co-created Single File with a lot of those law firm partners. So that's my background in a thumbnail.
What does Single File do?
So for all of us who start brand new companies, the first thing you usually do is use a registered agent to go form a Delaware C Corp. And we automated that whole process. And if you're someone who has many different entities, you have to do many of those things. And then depending on where those entities are registered, you have a bunch of reporting crap you have to go do. And you can't remember like, wait, what state do I have to report which thing in on which frequency with which form? So Single File effectively aggregates and automates that entire process for a founder or a chief financial officer on behalf of a company. Hence the name Single File, and keeps track of all of that sort of work. And when you think about a law firm, especially a corporate law firm, they're not trying to make money on corporate filings like that, right? They're trying to, how do we get a company up and running quickly to make sure then that the founders can take over and operate that company quickly. And this company grew very quickly through COVID when people started hiring remotely. So I might start a company in Seattle and then hire a person in Texas and a person in Oklahoma and a person in Maine. And all of a sudden I have to register my company in 4 different states. And I may have, depending on the nature of my business or what I'm doing in those particular states, different types of filings that I have to do. So Single File automates that entire process.
Very, very smart idea. I mean, it's, as someone who owns a few different companies, dealing with the administrative side of filing things is annoying. And we have a lawyer who does that, and it doesn't seem like something you would need a lawyer to do. It's a purely administrative task. So that seems like a great idea. So that brings me to the point you were making about you vetted 500 plus business ideas. And then from that, you've launched 43 companies. It sounds similar in ways to our business model because we do kind of high-end plaintiff's trial work. We might see, at one point we had the data on it, but it's between 500 and 1,000 potential cases for every one case we accept and do. And so there has to be a methodology for how you narrow that down and the decision-making criteria to identify something that has value from something that doesn't. Can you talk about, I know you've done a lot to kind of systematize that, and there's a lot of thinking that goes into what the criteria are that you use for that. So can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So first of all, everybody should think that, while this process could be more made generic, we are trying to build venture scale software companies. So the decision points that we may have along the way may be different if you were starting a restaurant or choosing to do your own law firm or building a construction company. But in our particular case, we have the goal of building venture scale software companies.
That means that it has to have the potential for, $1 billion valuation someday or something?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're going to venture fund it, then those venture investors generally will say, could this be a $1 billion company? Could this be big enough to go public? And therefore, certain parts of the decisioning are important for that process. That's it. Our process at PSL is really a 5-stage process. So it's ideation. How do we come up with the ideas? Validation. Is this going to be a venture scale opportunity? Creation. Now that we think it is, let's go create the company. Spin out, and then scale up. So ideation, validation, creation, spin out, scale up. Each of those is effectively a decision point for us. Like, what idea do we pull off the stack? Can we convince ourselves that this is a good idea for PSL to go work on? Meaning then that's validation. Can we find a leader for it? So moving from validation to creation is effectively, is there going to be, who's the CEO in seat? Creation, we narrow back down into what is the first thing that we are going to ship, to whom, what are early adopter customers. The end of creation is the day the company is founded. Then it goes through this spin out process where we start building up the initial team, the first paying customers, and then ultimately raising external venture capital. And then we go into the scale up phase once we've raised external venture capital from new investors. So ideation, validation, creation, spin out, scale up. And I'll call it 500. We've generated many thousands of ideas. And we entered about 500, north of 500 into validation, about 60-ish into creation. 43 have gotten into that spin out phase, and the majority of those are gone on to raise venture money. And now we're in the scale up phase. We'll go on and raise more and more money and get bigger and bigger as they move in through their life.
Is your time frame always the same? Like, do you expect them to be at the scale up stage at year 3 or year 4? Because they're all very similar companies in the same field, or is that fungible and able to be changed?
It changes quite dramatically. So the fastest we've ever, let's talk on the first really 3 phases of ideation, validation, creation, meaning from an idea to a spun out company with a management team and venture and our money put into that particular company. The fastest we've ever done that is 6 weeks.
That's fast.
Idea to first paying customers in 6 weeks. More normally, that's about 3 months. Okay, so then some every now and again, it'll take us 6 months to do one of those things. So let's say normal is 3 months. And if I break that into 2 phases, I might have 1 month to 6 weeks in validation, 2 to 3 months in creation. But what we're really trying to think is, can we get that whole thing done in 3 to 4 months? Once you get into the spin out phase, that's now we're building the management team. We're taking on those first early adopter customers. We're preparing the company for external fundraising. That's normally a couple of months too, but it varies a little bit depending on where they fit in the calendar year. Because there's only 2 good times of the year to raise money from venture investors. That's the spring and the fall. So you want to be ready in January 15th or September 15th. So depending on where a company might spin out, effectively the day that's founded, it may have a slightly longer time or even shorter time in that spin out phase to effectively get ready to raise money and then successfully raise capital from that. So that might be a couple months plus or minus. So maybe from ideation to externally venture funded might be kind of a 6-month long kind of time frame, maybe 8 months long. Once it's into that, it then starts to fall into a normal venture funded startup. And the faster funding companies will raise money every 12 to 18 months and a slower funded company 18 to 24 months. And so they just get into that natural kind of rhythm. They raise enough to last generally about 18 months of the company. If they're going really, really well and there's lots of interest, they might raise more money faster. Or if it's going a little bit slower, taking a little bit more time to mature, it might be that sort of slower 24-month cycle. And that all happens in the spin-out phase.
Interesting.
I mean, the model that you follow sounds similar to the Eric Ries lean startup kind of philosophy of getting ideas out there, putting them in front of people quickly, iterating, creating minimum viable products, so forth, and utilizing your customers to help you develop. Is that accurate? As opposed, in terms of, because having seen your presentation on this and then reading some of these books, I've been struggling to think about what elements of that apply to building a business like a law firm, and what elements of that are really unique to tech startups or to, like you said, venture scale businesses. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, we tend to try to do all this stuff very fast, and I will attempt to make it useful for even if I were thinking about starting a law firm. The first thing that we tend to do is to characterize a business through a framework we call the CVFB framework. So customer value prop feature set business model. For these types of customers who want this thing, our product does, and we charge in this way. So forcing it into a law firm, for early stage startups who need better IP protection, our cool product, we have smart lawyers and some cool AI stuff that we have, and we charge a flat fee for every submission of a patent. I'm just making one up. So that would be a CVFB. The second would then be our ideal customer profile, or ICP, is early stage founders who are engineering background, that happen to live in Seattle, that want to protect their IP more effectively. Even better if ... their IP is unique. They think that big law firms are too expensive. They think that big law firms are too slow, et cetera, et cetera. So the more of that criteria you can have, the more you can validate or invalidate your idea. And then how quickly can I go talk to customers? So I implied there a little bit of competitive differentiation, or UCA, which we would call unique competitive advantage. Like, why is your new cool IP law firm better than me just calling, some large law firm here or some dedicated IP firm here in Seattle or wherever you're building? So it's CVFB, customer value prop feature set business model, ICP, ideal customer profile, UCA, unique competitive advantage, And then how quickly, if you believe that you've gotten through the competitive advantage component, which is the first thing that we do, because we come up with a CVFB and then we're like, there must be someone else already doing this. And then you actually usually go Google that and there's like 40 people doing the thing you're doing. And then you make a choice of, is there white space for me to actually play in this space? Do I have something that's unique? Am I focused on a different customer base? Am I focused on a different value prop? Am I focused on a unique feature set? Like in this case, it might be few lawyers and lots of AI, or a better IP scraper thing that you build, whatever your advantage is. And, or you may have unique business model. Like all those guys are going to charge you hourly for every freaking 6 minutes, and we're charging you a flat fee, 5K, whatever, pick your thing. So that CVFB, ICP, UCA, and then it's really about voice of customer. So as fast as you can, meaning in our case, it's usually the next day, like day 2 of an idea is go talk to customers. And we've built a whole bunch of software internally, and we'll bring this up in a little point, is we've actually automated ourselves with a whole bunch of software. So we built a thing internally called Mesh, which basically is all the people that we know. It's over 120,000 people, all of their LinkedIn contacts. And for any ICP, we can go reach out to those people like almost immediately and say, hey, we're building a new blah thing. We think you would be a good customer for blah thing. We'd love to ask you some more questions about blah thing. And that ability for us to take a narrow or known network and access that network very rapidly to then, let's say we get 10, 20, 30 people that we know who could be an ideal customer profile for a new idea. Based on that signal, we're like, yeah, we talked to 30 people and they don't care. Dead. Like, okay, that idea dies relatively quickly on customer interest. Or like, hey, we talked to some people that we know, like, hey, we had 3 of 4 or 5 or 10 of those people of the 30 we talked to that really kind of thought this was a pretty good idea. They like this idea. And then we'll start working on the next phase of customer development, which is people we don't know. So that turns into the beginnings of go-to-market. Like, well, how am I going to find new customers? Am I make LinkedIn posts? Am I doing advertisements on Instagram? How am I going to find new customers in a scalable and efficient way? So while we're primarily focused on VOC or voice of customers, we are laying the foundation for GTM or go-to-market. So I apologize for all the acronyms, but we use lots of this to more efficiently CVFB, ICP, VOC, voice of customer, UCA, and then GTM.
We have an IECU in our business. We create some acronyms here as well. Every business kind of does some version of that. When you're going out to the customers, I mean, you'd explain this using LinkedIn profiles and so forth, and you're putting out ideas. How do you get people to respond? Because I assume people are barraged with, LinkedIn stuff or contacts. And I can say for myself, I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't think I've ever responded to anything through LinkedIn. So is it a challenge to get attention spans enough to get the feedback you need?
Absolutely, right? But I mean, why wouldn't you want to figure this out before you start the business?
Oh, absolutely. I would. It's a hard thing to do because you're relying on people caring enough to respond. I guess that's part of the point though, right?
That's the point.
Yeah.
So if you as the founder or us as a co-founder, so think of PSL as a co-founder, and let's just for sort of role playing this, Ben and I are going to go start a company. Ben is going to be the CEO of said company. And we are going to bring our best practices on how will Ben go find new customers for his new company. Now, a lot of our ideas, let's say we make it through the competitive landscape. Like, okay, yep, Ben and I, we think there's actually enough idea here to go build a new company around. And we go try 4 or 5 different ways in which we think we can efficiently find customers. We scream out into the internet and no one cares. No one responds. No one wants to schedule a call. No one, okay, like dead. Like we have a lot of different ways that we try this. And more often than not, like people don't care, or they kind of care a little bit. So the first is, can we find customer interest? So that's the point you're making. Okay, people will call, we're like, oh yeah, that seems pretty cool. I'd like to talk to you, Ben, about your new idea. Or then let's say that we do that. The next thing is, can we quantify Ben's demands? Meaning, Ben, if I could solve this, or let's say Ben and TA are calling Jeff. Jeff, if we could solve this problem for you, could you pay for it? Yeah, I could pay for it. Could you pay $1,000 a month for it? Oh no, I could never pay $1,000 a month. I could pay $10 a month to solve that. Okay, that's good interest. Ben, Jeff, thank you very much for the call. We're going to keep looking around. We hope that we can find some people who want to pay us $1,000 a month for this new thing. But if we don't, then we'll get back to you and we'll let you know what's going on. Rinse and repeat. Most of our good founders can do these, they're called customer discovery calls. They can do them in 30 minutes. They can learn a lot about what Jeff does or doesn't want, what Jeff uses to solve whatever problem he may or may not have, his ability or willingness to pay. All of that happens in what we would call customer discovery and or customer development. And customer development is a lot more close to sales, because ultimately I want Jeff to say, oh my God, yes, this is a huge problem. And I would absolutely pay you $1,000 a month if you could solve it. And I would love to be a design partner for you and give you good early adopter feedback for this thing because I need it. So I needed it yesterday. And if we're not finding that customer pull as we characterize it, then that idea is already less good. Doesn't mean we won't do it. It just means that finding more Jeffs, or maybe it's going to take longer to close Jeff as a customer, or maybe, like the business is going to be harder to scale. So it probably is not a kill on our side, but it's certainly interesting. So I'll give you one example. Yesterday, we started working on this 2 weeks ago, we started working on this new company. The founder, who has deep expertise in this particular category, made a post on LinkedIn about what he was working on. He had over 200 people respond and sign up for early adopter for this particular product that he just talked about on LinkedIn with one post. Okay, now is that a blend of how good he is? Yes. How much domain expertise and credibility he has in this space? Yes. Some indication of the customer demand for that thing, the problem, the pain being high. And that 2 weeks later is turned into LOIs, letters of intent, from 3 incredibly large, very well-known companies. Okay, that is strong customer pull. And we have an equal idea of running right next to it is like, we're screaming out of the end and no one cares. So that's about to be killed.
So how is the individual entrepreneur or founder just as important as the idea?
Way more.
Okay.
Way more important than the idea. Because the individual founder, well, ultimately, they're going to have to go run the company, spend the next 5 or 10 years of their life like building this company. So they better really believe it. Not only that is, customers are not going to buy from me at PSL. They're buying from that CEO, that founder. And that founder is going to attract capital. They're going to have to attract people. They're going to have to attract customers. They're going to have to drive an industry. They're going to have to drive a whole narrative. In the best companies, all of a sudden, usually that CEO starts to emerge as a thought leader in new category. Right? Or all the old guys can't figure out how to do it and he or she is the new person doing it. So the founder is way more important. What we bring at PSL is, in certain cases, a lot of these techniques and tools to know what good is, the difference between average, good, and great in a lot of different categories, a lot of different expertise on what is the right choices to be made when, and the ability to sort of augment that founder with a founding team. So we have a whole recruiting team and a whole recruiting process that will surround Ben, in this case, if Ben were going to be the CEO, with the right kind of people, depending on what kind of business he's going to try and go build.
Let me ask you this, because obviously the podcast is Build and Grow Your Law Firm. So a lot of our listeners are either they have their own practices and they're looking to scale them and grow them, or they're currently working for probably a larger firm and they're debating whether they should go out on their own or not and hang their own shingle. So we use the phrase, and it's probably a tagline, well, you can't do that unless you have an entrepreneurial spirit. So I'm curious, what are the attributes that kind of encompass the entrepreneurial spirit that you see almost every founder has that leads to success?
Yeah. So they usually have had they've sort of been successful at doing something in their past. They know what excellence looks like. Now, this could have been a sports thing. They could have been a great, the top fastest approaching, associate at whatever law firm. They could have done something great in college. That's one. 2 is they're inherently curious. So they're the people who are finding your podcast, who are reading about it, who are sharing it with their other friends, who are finding adjacent information. So you mentioned Eric Ries. They're the kind of people who are like, oh yeah, I know about Eric Ries. I read this startup. I read this. I know about Brad Feld. I know about PSL. So they're inherently curious. 3rd is they're good at attracting talent. So they're the people who people want to sit next to at lunch because they're learning new things and people want to be around them. because ultimately you're going to have to go build a team, and you want to, sometimes that's your, savoir-faire, your sort of magnanimous personality. Sometimes it's the information. Sometimes it's your ability to help other people be successful. Sometimes it's all of those. They're probably pretty good at sales. And a lot of people don't like sales. Most founders like sales. Most founders like closing. They like finding an investor to say yes. They like finding a customer to say yes. They like finding a hire that they have no business getting, saying yes. That's a function of selling. And if you don't like selling, then you shouldn't start, right? You have to be the rainmaker, right? If it's your firm, like you got the primary job of selling or deciding which customers you're going to take. So selling. They somehow find a way to make shit happen, right? I mean, there's lots of people who are like, well, it won't work for this reason or this reason or this reason or this reason. That's the majority of people. You give them an idea and they tell you all the reasons it won't work. Founders and entrepreneurs find ways to make it work. And I'd say the last thing is they are just freaking workhorses, right? They just find a way to do more than everybody else. And oftentimes they still are, have good work-life integration. They still can be good parents, but they find a way to just get more done. And that could be by leveraging technology. That could be by working harder, getting up earlier, staying later, doing stuff on Saturdays. I mean, they just work harder. It's just the way it is for being an entrepreneur. Because if you're going to compete, there is somebody who's going to work that hard. There's work hard and work smart, and the best entrepreneurs do both.
That was great. Thank you.
That certainly seems to encompass the topic quite well. And I think we can relate to many of those things, and some of them we're aspiring to be better at. TA, so here's a question for you. You talked about a problem that when you put it out there, a company or an idea that solves a problem, a pain point, as you said, that somebody is willing to shell out resources for. Are there things you're seeing in trends in terms of where pain points tend to be and where solutions are coming? Or is it just very unique to every, different industry and every different kind of field?
Well, I think, so I'll probably speak more to the solution side, but it's obvious, I hope everybody listening, it is obvious we are at another technological wave called AI. I'm old enough to have been building companies through the internet wave, through the cloud wave, through mobile for web services, and then mobile social. Like I have a company that I've done at every one of those phases myself. And so I'm old enough and experienced enough now to see that this AI wave is just like those. It might be even more important, I don't know yet, but it is certainly of equal importance. And therefore, over 2 years ago, we said, like, anything that's not AI, we're stopping working on. This is an important time. We have to be great at this. And I would argue that as founders, entrepreneurs, you have to be great at that too. And you have to be recognizing this is a technological shift of, immense proportion. And so that is for every founder, every one of your large, like you have to be leaning into this. It's like sitting here in 1995 and saying, intranet, schmintranet, whatever, I don't care. You're like, no, I started paying attention to the internet then. And that's the same point in time. So it's more on the solution side. On the problem side, I think that the better companies we're finding are able to articulate certain business processes that should be automated. Oftentimes they're ones that people don't like doing. They're routine, they're annoying, and that's like a single file kind of a company. They're also going to benefit significantly from the capabilities of these LLMs. And I was astounded. I mean, we use lots of internal tooling here the other day. I was working on a financing for one of our companies. I uploaded all the documents to ChatGPT yesterday, and I said 2 days ago, and I said, listen, I'm the first investor in this company. There's a new lead investor in this company. And I want you to review all these documents, give me recommendations on what I should do or anything I should be aware of. Okay, this is what I would have normally done with my law firm. In fact, I did it in parallel with my law firm. And it came back with, do you want me to be more in your favor, more in their favor, or more balanced? So I answered balanced. It reviewed all the documents, gave me 5 to 7 different, not only suggestions, but also rationale for the suggestions. In my opinion, better than I've ever had from any law firm. It caught 3 or 4 spelling mistakes that were already reviewed by different law firms. It caught 2 run-on sentences that were just sort of misses, omissions, aren't material, but it caught it anyway. And it prepared a document I could send back to my law firm that says, these are my recommended changes. OMG, that's incredible.
And it did all that in probably about 5 minutes.
Yeah, less.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 minutes. And I didn't have to add all the context. And I mean, maybe there'll be revisions on the documents, et cetera, et cetera. So that is something that, for me as a business person, that was incredibly useful, even if I ran it in parallel with my law firm. But in the future, I'm going to run that first, and then I'm going to assess whether those are important or not. And then I'm going to see whether my law firm actually caught them, which they didn't. And in those particular cases, I'm now better and I may not need that law firm as much. And I would argue that for everybody who's running a business or thinking about running a business, you can think about every functional area in your business and you can think about how can that be done better? How could I write a better board report? How could I do a better marketing campaign? And I could give you lots of examples of companies that we have created at PSL, which automate different functional areas for business, irrespective of what that business does. Finding new customers, doing reporting like single file, filing and managing immigration like one of our companies called Boundless. These are all functional things that companies need to do that are now being automated with software. And I would encourage all of your listeners, if they're running firms, to start to get good at finding, evaluating, onboarding, and leveraging these technical solutions, which may be direct at the LLM level, like ChatGPT or Claude, or indirectly level by people who built applications on top of those.
I'm going to circle back to that in 1 second, but your description of how you used ChatGPT to review documents equivalent to what you'd have a lawyer do in the past. We do a lot of very complex medical cases, and you can feed medical data into ChatGPT and ask it, if you're the doctor in the emergency department with these vital signs and these lab reports and these imaging studies and this patient history, et cetera, what should you do? And I could tell you, at least as often as not, ChatGPT will come up with something or get it right in a way that the actual provider on the ground didn't. We see that all the time. This patient
Absolutely.
needs to be admitted urgently for X, Y, Z, and this, and instead they're sent home and they go on to die from what would have been a treatable condition. And so I think it's just it's going to change a lot. If that's the case, why would we not have doctors utilize that technology? Why would we not have lawyers utilize that technology and so forth? I think that one of the challenges is that what you just described of trying to come up with a systematized way to utilize the technology for maximum benefit, that itself takes time and understanding, right? And so there's literally, we're barraged on a daily basis with different AI solutions for lawyers. Some are great, some are terrible. We've used some of them that are absolutely worthless. Frankly, ChatGPT is about as good as anything in my experience. But how does somebody start that process? They've got a firm, let's say they got 10 lawyers, and $10 million a year in revenue and 20 staff, and they've always done things the way they've always done them in the past, but now they want to automate their workflow. They want to find the best solutions to move in a more technology and AI driven direction. How do they even start that process?
So I'll talk in two ways. One is internally, what I recommend is that, partners start doing this, right? Don't delegate this. Partners start playing. That's one. Two is have demo days. So most firms or most companies will have, Friday lunch or a Wednesday beers after work or whatever. Start doing demo days. So every one of those, there are people who are demoing what they're doing. And it could be using ChatGPT to plan a cool vacation to Europe. Okay, that's fine. Probably better if somebody did some use case like I did, and hey, you know what? My client asked me to do a bunch of blah, blah, blah stuff. I just tried to make ChatGPT or Claude or one of these other LLMs do it. And here's what I found. This was good. This was bad. So demo days are important. That starts to say you know what? It's Joe over in that, Joe, that junior associate, he's the one. He's the one who knows and is most interested. And he's the one who's kind of going to lead us and continue to do cooler and cooler demos. Next would be for you to sit once a month and say, what are the things that we would like to automate if we could using new technical solutions? And if it could be automated, what would we pay for it? And how would we quantify its value? Would that be worth $100 a month, $1,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $100,000 a month? And that could be either on the revenue generating side or the cost saving side or both. But I call that QVP or quantified value prop. So if you, as the economic buyer, think, shit, that'd be awesome if we could save $1,000, we could pay $1,000 a month for that because we could easily think it's worth $5,000 a month for it. Okay, now you're into vendor selection. How do you get good at finding people who might be doing something like this? Well, that's one functional area. Luckily for us, we have these basically AI search tools now that can help you say, like, who are all the people who are doing X, Y, and Z? And can you tell me about who those people are? Start finding the vendors. The next is the ability to evaluate vendors. So being a good early adopter customer, if you become a good early adopter customer, you can find early stage companies, and I would go smaller versus larger. You can pay them fairly for what their product is doing. You can be very, very good at giving them regular, consistent product feedback. And if you're good at giving product feedback, you're more likely they're going to build those features for you into their product. And you can be good at offboarding them. So my general rule of thumb is 1 month, 3 months. So if you said, hey, Mr. Vendor, like let's pick Supio, for example. Hey, Mr. Supio vendor, I would like to try your product for 1 month. I'm happy to pay you for whatever you want to charge me for it. I will give you weekly feedback for the next month. And at the end of 1 month, I might kick you out and say, thank you very much. Your product sucked. Or I'm going to use the next 2 months to figure out whether it becomes core to what we do. Usually takes probably 1 to 3 months. And by core to what we do is like, no, we're starting to make a long-term bet. This is the way that we do X, Y, and Z, and we use this product to do it. And if the answer is like, we used it at 1 month, we kicked it out, you might try the next product that does something similar. You will get very, very good at identifying what works, what you should evaluate, who you should onboard, who you should keep, and who you should offboard. No matter what, for early stage startups, that is very valuable feedback.
No, that's really great advice. In fact, Jeff, I really would like to implement that approach. I mean, we formed an AI committee, but it's really been more just individual action on different products that's led to our adoption of different things here rather than kind of having that more deliberative process for it. But I think we should try to do that.
Need help on a complex personal injury or medical malpractice case? Gideon Asen accepts case referrals and regularly co-counsels with lawyers nationwide on high-value claims. The firm has recovered millions of dollars in cases that competitors turned away because they dig deeper. Ready to learn more? Email bgideon@gideonasenlaw.com to start the conversation. Gideon Asen shares fees as permitted by the laws of each state. Don't let complex cases overwhelm your practice. Elevate justice together with Gideon Asen.
But let's just say that you had 10 law firms who were of similar, I mean, this is what we did at Injury Board, right? That was really great that if you had like 10 of those firms said like, oh, I have a problem to do X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden you're like, you know what? Geez, you got that problem? You got that problem? You have a vendor? I can't find a vendor for that. So in many ways, you could call me at PSL and say, please create that company for us because we all want to be good early adopter customers. We'll pay $1,000 a month for it. Okay, that's going all the way to the creation phase of the company. But my sense would be in many cases, there's probably already somebody doing it, that if one or more of you are sharing like, hey, we tried that one and we liked it for this reason, this reason, this reason, we didn't like it for that reason. Oh, the team is super responsive. They're building features that we like, and that becomes the standard. I mean, I think that's what like Supio has done, or Lexion has done, or Single File has done, or Boundless has done. These are all companies that, I'm aware of that are in this particular category. And in those ways, you're being good early adopter individual customers like your firm, or a collection of firms, and that knowledge sharing is quite powerful. And in most cases, you're not directly competing with each other.
We're actually working on something like that. We have a consortium of law firms that has been working on the idea of pooling all of our collective work product and then building an infrastructure to integrate that in an AI platform that allows it to remain confidential and allows us to work with a kind of a general AI knowledge. Because one of the frustrating things we have as lawyers, I find, is that we have the kind of general AIs like ChatGPT or Claude or what Perplexity. And then we have the products that are built out just for lawyers that allow you to upload case files, individual files, and so forth. But they don't come with the lateral knowledge that the general AIs have. And then the general AIs don't have any of our work product. So it's very frustrating. And what we tend to do is anonymize our casework and then utilize the general AIs to help us analyze it. But it's a two-step process and it has a lot of flaws. And historically, lawyers were not able to share that information. I mean, all of these files are sitting in law firms in their filing cabinets or their hard drives. They're not in the public domain anywhere. And generally lawyers don't provide that. So
we're at the early days, right?
Yeah.
We're at the early days. This is like sitting here in 1995 when we had 9600 baud modems and people are like, oh, the internet's too slow and it's not useful. The people who figured it out, the people who worked through it we're at the early days here too, right? And some of the items you're talking about, I mean, you give that feedback to the vendor side, they want you to be a successful customer. They want you to stay longer. They're going to listen to that input and potentially solve some of those problems. And at the other side, you're creating effectively your own use case to say, listen, guys, like I feel like I can do this with myself. Why do I need you guys? So that in and itself is useful at a firm level to continue to find the right workflow, figure out the things and how you would quantify value, figure out whether you're going to use the platform vendor, a la Claude, OpenAI, et cetera, or you're going to use a multitude of different vendors and just get better at onboarding and offboarding them very quickly.
I guess a final thing, do you have kind of your preferred, let's say, top 5, top 10 workflow platforms that you utilize that you think are particularly valuable just for kind of general workflow, organizing thoughts, notes, day-to-day operations that you would recommend other people check out?
Let's say, so I have a list on my blog, which is like called the tools I use. So that lists a lot of different personal productivity tools. I tend to think of myself as a personal productivity geek. The next tool I'll talk about is one that we've just built at PSL and just launched, which is called Lev, which is basically an AI product to do everything I said at PSL. So for founders out there, you can use Lev to do competitive landscape and find customers and do marketing, branding, and build a product even. So we've basically productized ourselves into this product called Lev, which is at getlev.co. Then when I think about other tools for myself, I have a dedicated product I use called Blocks. And Blocks is a call recording and transcribing system, but it's specifically for VCs. So when you think about when I do my work, I might talk to a founder or a customer or another co-founder or all that, and it'll aggregate all that information. You can imagine it for yourselves too. So it's who are the people and what did we talk about around a topic like a case. I can upload documents to Blocks, BLOKS. I can upload documents and it can in fact have templates to create content based on that. So I write investment memos, for example, and those can be all aggregated based on calls, documents, and the AI called Blocks. I also use this cool thing from a company called
that's special for venture capital.
Well, it's special for project-based recording, right? There's project, in my case, I use it for venture, but I could imagine Blocks working just as well for lawyers. And you have lots and lots of calls that you all record that all effectively are project-oriented, right? And so the project may have people and it may have calls and it may have a project. You may want to have all that stuff kind of aggregated together, and then you might want to write and pull data out from that. So Blocks would be another one from a friend of mine up in Canada. I'd say the last product, which has kind of been really fun and new for me, has been the Limitless Pendant. So this is a little thing like that lives on my shirt that records and transcribes all day long everything I say and everything you say. And so at the end of the day, I can listen to myself and I say, remind me to send a thank you note to Ben, and it's going to show up in all my reminders, as well as all the context. And if I were giving you feedback about a pitch or something like that, all of that's being automatically transcribed, and then I can just send that back to a founder. So now I run around and my CEOs run around with this thing where they're basically listening to customers and saying, oh, Mr. Customer, you said you needed X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to get you back to that on Tuesday. So they're 100% focused on the customer as opposed to trying to get all the notes exactly what you said, because I know exactly what you said. So Limitless Pendant is a really fun product I've been playing with and liking a lot.
I'm curious because you've obviously seen the progression of our knowledge economy through multiple different phases, as you've pointed out, and participated in them, and you're actively involved in the AI boom at present. There's a lot of debate about kind of, now I'm moving more into the metaphysical and philosophical, political realm. Where do you think we're heading with all this? And what are your projecting an optimistic view of the productivity gains? Do you have a wholly optimistic view of where we're heading, or what is your kind of gestalt view of all this? And kind of leave it at that. Small question there to round it out. But
I tend to be an optimist in general, and a techno-optimist, but I am an engineer and therefore I have a little bit of realist in me too. But because of what I do and the nature of being I think to be a founder and to be an entrepreneur, you have to start with an optimistic bias, right? If not, everything won't work. Here's 40 reasons why it won't work, and you never do anything and you just stay working at big law firm X, doing it the same old way for a long, long time. And maybe that's fine. But as a founder, entrepreneur person, I tend to be techno-optimist. So here's a few things that feel very optimistic to me. A, the capabilities of these tools are incredible. And I'm seeing it every day in the products that we're building or my own individual usage. Two is the ability for someone to use these tools is near zero, right? It's near zero, like $20 a month. You're using the best technology on the planet for not very much money, less than you probably spend on coffee. And even if you're in a poor country, it's still not that expensive. It's very approachable. Third is the ability to learn is basically zero too. All you have is effort. If you care, like you can go learn nearly for free also. And there are going to be lots of people who are going to choose not to learn, who are going to say, well, this is a problem and I won't do that and I'm too busy and whatever. But for the people who have initiative and an interest, your ability to learn and utilize these tools is very, very inexpensive. That's incredible. And they're inexpensive everywhere on the planet. That is incredible. Now let's pull this back to Lev for a moment, is if the tools like Lev exist, which they do. Now you can take people who have interest and some expertise and some entrepreneurial bent, and there can be this flowering of hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs that might not have been able to do that before. Because I put 10 years worth of knowledge into this software thing, which you can buy for $20 a month, to go build your own brand new company that is all built on the backs of our expertise, our rubrics for success, our reasoning that comes from these LLMs. So entrepreneurial opportunity, learning opportunity, technological opportunity, all happening at this very moment. That's hard not to be optimistic about, at least in the technical category. We could talk about political challenges, we could talk about environmental challenges, we could talk about societal challenges, and those are very real, and I think those are important to pay attention to as well. But for the narrow category of what can be possible to unleash human creativity, to unleash human productivity, we're at an incredible time to do that.
I certainly agree with that. And I find I use the technology to satisfy curiosities on a moment-to-moment basis. I mean, from individual health issues to finance and investing issues to business-related issues and so forth. It does occur to me that but the very career I'm in at some point may no longer be required, given the AI can maybe do it better. And there's a sort of an irony in that the ability to unleash our human potential through it is utilizing things that aren't necessarily at some point don't require humans anymore. But that's a more of a metaphysical future thing. It's just an interesting thought about it.
I hope your audience can Lev is a good example of us disrupting ourselves.
Right. I was going to ask, I mean, now how do you monetize the value of your knowledge and expertise when, like you said, someone can acquire that for $20 a month?
Yeah. So in many ways, we could have way more people. I can only spend so many hours in the day working on so many companies. I'm kind of limited by that. So as soon as I get human, but there's 10,000 people who could benefit from our knowledge, maybe 100,000, maybe 1 million, I don't know. But I can't deal with all those people, right? I've chosen to be physically, geographically bound. So why wouldn't I want that to happen? And some of those people will want to raise venture capital because their ideas will be big enough, and maybe they'll call us at PSL. And some of those people, through the use of Lev, will figure out that they could benefit more by having both a software layer and a human layer to accelerate their idea. Maybe they're first-time founders, maybe they need some of our expertise, and that's fine too. So there will be some people who hopefully will press a button and launch on Lev. And there'll be some people who want to use that as a platform to engage with us or other humans personally, and other places where they just need more capital, and most of that capital is going to go to hiring humans as well. But that opportunity sort of enables, and I would argue that there must be law firms out there and accounting firms and consulting firms who see the same thing, and the ones who do that first are going to disrupt the people who are still sitting around finding reasons not to act.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, Tia, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know it's a little off the track for you, talking to some lawyers, and you were already kind enough to come to our conference, and doing this is above and beyond. So we really appreciate it. Hopefully our listeners will gain value. And if somebody has a good idea for a business or wants to explore further, they know about Lev now, they know about PSI and can reach out. I do think there are going to be a lot of businesses that are going to completely disrupt and change the way. I mean, the law firm model is going to just be totally different in the future, and we're already seeing it. The best ideas for that are probably still ahead of us. So.
True.
I hope
Thank you.
I hope so, and I hope that we can be a small, me can be a small part of certainly adding energy to that, cheering on for that, adding some level of structure or process to that, and in certain cases adding tooling or solutions to that. So to the people who want to go do those things, there's a LEV starting point, there's a TA start next point, there's a PSL next point, and I think we have an opportunity, all of us in this sort of category, to help the best and most entrepreneurial people thrive.
Good. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Elevate, Build and Grow Your Law Firm. Share with colleagues if you found it valuable. Remember, building a successful law firm takes discipline, strategy, and determination. But you're not alone. Produced and powered by LawPods.